great guy. I just
Hi,
wanted
Claire.
to answer the question. Oh, I've forgotten what the question was when you said, "Oh, damn! I came in hot trying to answer your question, and now it's gone out of my
Well, do
mind."
you remember the
It was something
answer?
Rick was saying.
Okay.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Original sin, and um, I mean, I think people misunderstand the nature of original sin. It's not just, nobody's perfect kind of idea, because that was what I thought original sin was. That, it's the idea that, only God is perfect. We're just mortal and human, and therefore we're bound to sin. But it's more than that. It's a way of getting parents to have their children baptized, because if they don't have their children baptized, then if their infant dies, it goes to purgatory, right? I mean, that's the idea. It's a clever way of getting anxious parents to, get their children baptized, which is
Yeah,
part of
that whole
the.
paradigm I don't buy, I don't believe in.
Yes, but I suppose this was enforced in Europe.
Oh
The
yeah, I
whole
mean,
idea of the church, putting its foot into your door to make sure that,
sure,
a
sure.
cradle
It
to grave
became,
thing.
yeah, it became the status quo of what you should do. I mean, there was a lot of that.
But
Something.
isn't there a certain kind of, moral disintegration since Christianity crossed the Atlantic into America? Mark, you were doing some interesting research, and I wanted to ask you about your book and Restorationism, which is a peculiar form of American Christianity,
Very peculiar.
which just wouldn't have been able to, wouldn't have been allowed in Europe. Um,
Right.
so um, so I think if we want to understand Christianity, we have to understand how it began and what it has now become
Hmm.
in
Yeah,
you know
absolutely. And
in its
actually,
American form.
that's why I'm here, was to talk about the historical Christianity that Mark has been working on. And I read one of the books that he recommended, The Democratization of American Christianity. And it's just fascinating.
It's a
The
good
First
book.
Great Awakening, the Second Great Awakening,
Mhm.
and why things are the way they are now. It really gives a great insight. Basically, it's anti-clerical, anti-intellectual.
It's
Mm.
Nathan
Nathan
Hatt.
O'Hatch. Yep.
Yeah,
Very good book.
yeah. And it's like I can really relate to that. Like I told Mark a minute ago, I'm a free spirit. I don't want to be, I don't want to have to depend on hierarchy to tell me what to do. And that's what happened in early America. People said, hey, some stuffed shirt priest or pastor isn't going to, doesn't inspire me. I Let's go out in the field and let the spirit come in, and it's very successful. But a lot
Can
of it
I?
was,
Oh, yeah. Can I speak to that real briefly? Because I
yeah,
am. I'm very close to begin to produce something and get it out there, but it takes time to do it right. I
yeah,
could cheat and ask AI to do a hatchet job on it and just shovel it out there on with my name on it. I'm not
yeah.
going to do that. I'm reading the damn books myself, unfortunately, and it takes time. And the articles and I mean there's some, and thank goodness in this time of period, I mean this period of time, the Internet Archive and the ability to go all over the world virtually and get your eyes on sources that you would normally have to fly to libraries, and even if you even knew they were there, it's just amazing that there's so much here that I'm able to do just from my little office in Redlands. But anyway, um, the I'm going to start with a study on the Oneida cult, and the reason I'm choosing it because it's centered in time, and it begins at the towards the, I guess, the last half of the so-called Second Great Awakening in the 1830s, and ends in 18 I said, did I say 1700s? 18 from about 1830 to about almost 1880. So it spans this really interesting period of time. And it does. That's led by a kind of prophet who begins as a Presbyterian, very ordered, very constrained. He meets Charles Finney and is more or less and is converted through Finney's revivalism. Finney had taken the camp meetings that were very impromptu sorts of affairs, conducted by both Methodists and so-called New Light Presbyterians. And they were kind of freewheeling Pentecostal experiences on the frontier. Well, Finney turned it into a science. So he basically, he figured out a way to get people worked up and have a religious experience in a meeting. Well, a guy named John Humphrey Noyes was one of his converts in his early 20s. And he is so moved that he goes to seminary. He was a lawyer, just had become a lawyer. And he goes to seminary, ultimately finds himself at Yale. And at some point, he part of this is he takes the idea of what's called entire sanctification and takes it to its kind of ultimate logical extreme, and it becomes what's called a perfectionist. And the idea is not perfectionist through works, but he's perfected by Christ. And I'll skip the details on his theology there, but just basically comes to the idea, I can do no wrong. God is in me. If God is in me, how can I possibly do anything wrong? And this was actually a fairly popular idea. It caught on. Entire sanctification was huge. It was, because Methodism was huge at the time, and but when he says he's perfect and can do no wrong, that gets him in trouble with Yale authorities. They kick him out of the seminary. They take away his license to preach, which of course the United States really had no meaning, just license to preach in Presbyterian churches. And so he goes rogue out into the fields, so to speak. He finds similar minds. And what he then develops a whole theology around a very progressive vision. He takes passages in Scripture about in the kingdom of heaven you have neither male nor female. We'll be like the angels. So he had a big vision of male-female equality. But part of the story is it becomes a sex cult because he develops a practice, a science for birth control, because part of his personal experience was the tragedy of uncontrolled pregnancy and childbirth. They had he and his wife had experienced multiple stillbirths, and only one of 5 children with his first wife, his original wife, survived into adulthood, or even really survived infancy. And out of that pain and sorrow, he develops this method for birth control, which is a man being able to control his orgasm so that he doesn't ejaculate during orgasm. And so he, sorry for if this offends a mixed culture, Claire, apologies. And anyway, next thing you know, he's chased out of his first commune, and they move to a different location in upstate New York, at Oneida, and he develops a following of several hundred people, and in the course of things, because he has this idea that he's completely liberated himself. He's liberated himself from the established church. He's liberated himself from normal values, the taboos. We have record of him now that free of the taboos, free of organized religion and the prior constraints of the establishment, he created a community that lasted for 22, 23 years in its location in Oneida. They had a place where they were initiating young people as young as 12, maybe even younger, into this practice. And the idea was because sex was a kind of, if it was controlled and wasn't going, he distinguished between the procreative and the amative forms of sex. He's like this idea of sex is good, but procreation needs to be carefully controlled. And so they figured it out. They hacked it. They figured out the science so that they could prevent unwanted pregnancy. And so, the method was to have, and they developed a kind of religion around sex. And it ultimately crashed and burned, but and that's for the rest of the story. But my point in this conversation for bringing all that up is you have, and it was a restorationist vision. He saw himself as a restorationist. He believed the second coming of Christ happened at 70 AD. And everybody was, we just needed to get in line with our perfection and our perfect nature. And he ultimately, his community was just his religious organization was destroyed because authorities weren't going to let him statutorily rape children. Of course, at the time, age of consent was surprisingly low in the state of New York until the 1880s. But my point being with all this long thing is that I don't see how freedom it gets us anywhere necessarily. There's no built-in positive outcome. Did any of that land for you, Rick?
Yeah, I mean, hindsight, it's kind of obvious if you get everybody to believe that they're perfect, then they can do whatever they want. And that's not going to work, obviously, because they're not perfect. And
this guy was very progressive too. I mean, the women were required to, they went with shorter dresses and they wore pants under these kind of very long blouses, and they had freedom of movement. They were told if they were free to cut their hair short. They were actually encouraged to cut their hair short because they didn't need, because the fashion of the time was very constrained on women. Women participated in the leadership. This guy considered even that the incest taboo he discarded completely because he said that was the last vestige of the devil in society. Yeah. He really wanted to liberate. He went full on libertine in that way.
Yeah.
But in a controlled, but it was also very controlled. So, the way they trained young men into the practice is they didn't hand them over to the attractive young women. No, they kept the attractive young girls for the older men. Quite a system. And they sent the young men with older postmenopausal women to train so that when they had their, as expected, accidents, there was going to be any unwanted babies produced. And the way they enforced their the part of the training was through shaming and through a process of communal examination of individuals. So you basically stood before a committee and you answered for your failings, and your performance was reported by a quote mother. These older women were like matriarchs in the process of training young men how to control themselves. So you would think it'd produce a lot of neuroses. It's surprising it didn't produce more, but it's a it's a history of, you know, part of this. It's what I like about the Oneida story is that it's kind of Protestant. They took the Protestant vision to its kind of most logical extreme. We're going to unmoor ourselves from the traditions of the church, and he had a biblical reference for everything, you know.
Yeah. Well, freedom involves making mistakes, and hopefully we learn from our mistakes. And apparently those people did. But still, I think freedom is more valuable. God gives us freedom. It's one of the most important aspects of our being. The problem is when you cut loose from the authority, the hierarchy, then you get charismatic leaders like Noyes, who people follow because they're charismatic, and they can be led down into dark places or a lot of mistakes and errors. So again, my thing is learn from the past. Don't be afraid to experiment, but keep looking. Go ahead, Claire.
I'm sorry, I was just coughing.
Well,
Sorry for interrupting.
Well,
no,
it's
so
just here's the thing, though, is I don't see you have charismatic leaders who, for good or I mean, there's some good charismatic leaders, I suppose,
yeah,
but I want to know why shouldn't they be held accountable by higher authorities? Why? Okay, let's put it this way. I've asked before, is that are there Christians does the Catholic Church do good? And is the Catholic Church, are there Christians in the Catholic Church?
well, that's the thing. Being held accountable, it's like we have laws, state laws and federal laws. That's one level of accountability. The other level is social pressure. Like I said before, as long as you're not hurting somebody, and then it's okay. I mean, if you want to, worship a crystal ball and you don't hurt anybody, that's fine. Eventually, you'll probably move on to something else, maybe a little deeper.
But define hurting somebody, and this is one of the problems why Oneida was allowed to go on as long as it did was the age of consent in New York was 10 years of age.
Yeah. So
so they weren't technically guilty of statutory rape because, to our knowledge, they weren't initiating anyone below that age of consent.
And now we know that that's wrong. That's not healthy or helpful.
And in the 1880s, they raised it to 14.
Yeah.
Good for them.
I think in 1871, they lowered it to 7 in the state of Delaware. I don't know if you...
Delaware, yeah. That's always, when I ran into that one, I blew my mind that it was ever the case.
Yeah. And this fellow isn't the only one that, wants to have multiple wives. I mean, look at Mormonism.
Well, it's really interesting that Noyes and Joseph Smith come out of the same area. They were of Vermont originally.
Exactly. Yeah. So let me just say this. In those days, the amount of information, knowledge that was available was very limited.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that you could read the Bible yourself and understand it, I understand that that desire to make your own judgment. That's the way I am. But in those days, that was a huge mistake. because that way you get these charismatic people who read it one way, and that's why we have, like, I don't know how many denominations, 30,000, because people keep reading it and coming up with different ways to interpret it.
So why not just go with the established church, with the church, Rick? Because in this church, in this big church, in the church, you have a lot of rooms.
Some of my favorite people are Catholics: Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, Hans Kung, Matthew Fox, but they're all heretics. It's like
Saint Francis of Assisi.
Yeah, Francis Richard.
He wasn't a heretic.
Richard.
He's a saint.
These are my Catholic heroes, but they think more like me. They're
Check out John Henry Newman. He's a doctor of the church and a saint. John Henry Newman. Check him out, Rick.
Yeah, I've heard
Read him a little bit.
Him. I don't know much about him. I will check him out, but
yeah.
I
don't see, and here's my only point, and I want to hear from Claire next, is that when you mentioned about, well, now we know better. Okay.
Yeah.
I think you can look at the church in very much the same kind. If you give the church that same level of generosity and say that instead of looking at the church, say, of 500 AD or 1000 AD, or go to the Inquisition, 1500 or something, and say, oh, that's horrible, that's the worst, they're terrible. Yeah. What if you looked at them and said, they are like they're like a child that's maturing. A toddler isn't a failure when he falls down trying to run. He's just learning how to run.
Yeah, yeah.
And in that sense, he's the perfect toddler.
Mm-hmm.
So the church, even as the church is going off on its crusades or burning heretics at various stages, I think you can say it once. You can say, no, that's the wrong way for a church to be. Right, from where we stand today. On the other hand, because say a 2,000-year-old Catholic church should not act like that, but a Catholic church in 1,500 years, under the circumstances, was being exactly what it needed to be in that moment to survive the times in which it operated, because they were brutal times.
Right. So my response to that is, if the Catholic Church in 2026 would get on board with the central message of their belief system, liberation theology, social justice, no wars, the equality of men and women, no celibate priests.
Why do you want them? Why do you want to get involved? We don't want the Catholic Church involved in our bedrooms. Why are we getting involved in theirs? See, I don't think it's right for us to express an opinion on the sex lives of priests. I'm assuming everything's legal here. We're not going off into pederasty or something, but I'm saying that I don't have any more right to have an opinion about a priest's sex life than I think a priest has to have an opinion about your sex life as a non-Catholic.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting meme. But actually, in order to be a priest, you have to be celibate.
To be a Catholic priest.
A Catholic priest, yeah. So they're telling you what to do.
No, they're saying this is the standard for Catholic priests. They're not saying this is the standard for Episcopalian priests. They're saying this is the standard for Catholic priests.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, do you want a Catholic marriage? Or do you want a marriage under the eyes of the state of California that is legal within the state of California? They're two different things, in my opinion. I can live with both.
Yeah, if a priest wants to be celibate, that's fine. There should be a choice.
But the thing is that they're probably going to be gay. Because if you're a gay man, you'd be heading for the nearest Catholic seminary, won't you? Because nobody's going to rat on you.
Probably.
But if you're heterosexual and you knock up a girl, then you're going to be in trouble. But
I'd say
you'll
though
just
you're still
encourage the gay men
speculating
to
on
join.
people's, but I'd say you're still speculating on people's private lives, and that's you really don't know because you are speculating, and you're just making assumptions, and it's not. I try to avoid that as much as possible, assuming I have knowledge of people's private lives, of any persuasion, because I just don't know.
Well, even Catholics joke about it. I mean, that's a thing.
Yeah.
Catholics
They may or
joke
they may not.
about
I don't know. No Catholic has ever come to me talking about the sex lives of priests. So I've never had that. It's not a conversation I've had, jokingly or serious.
Well, what are the some of the negative consequences of that? I'm sure you know that priest celibacy thing.
Mm-hmm. And the Protestants have got rid of it 500 years ago. We've had 500 years of Protestantism with ministers, leaders, deacons, elders, all being free to fuck whomever they want within certain rules and constraints, and it's made not a damn bit of difference.
Well, when you say that, you mean adultery, or you mean being married?
Adultery, divorce, criminal activity, criminal sexual activity. There's not the presence of the constraint and the lifting of the constraint has not changed anything from what I can see.
Well, I think rules are made to be broken. I suppose that the greatest lawmaker of all, if you think it's God, expected everybody to break his commandments left, right, and center. I think we do. I mean, when we say, to our children, don't eat with your mouth full, or don't slam the door, and all that sort of thing. We sort of expect them to do it, and that's why we tell them not to.
With regard to this comment, Brett, you're always welcome I've never not welcomed you. Hop in if you have time.
Yeah.
No, I just don't see the fruits. You know something by its fruit. And if Protestantism is an improvement on Christianity, or if the Reformation actually reformed the church, well, clearly the Catholic Church today is not the church it was in Luther's day, and it has, I think, you in many ways it has reformed itself by the standards of many people. It's a morally better church. The quality of the leadership is arguably higher, better educated, more self-controlled. They learn from their mistakes, even after the horrific scene we had in the last 20 years with regard to the sex abuse scandal. Unlike other denominations, they made a good faith effort to root out the problem and institutionalize protections that I have more faith in than I do in any of the attention that, say, where a similar scandal took place in the Southern Baptist denomination, and all they're trying to do is not pay out on lawsuits and avoid taking blame and do very little to acknowledge that anything wrong was done. So, I mean, it's like, this is, and where do we, you want to find, well, I guess I'll finish there, but
I agree that the Catholics are making progress, and that God is alive and well in our world, and God is helping us make progress. One of the interesting things, like I believe in evolution, and interestingly enough, the Catholic Church, I'm not sure how many, 20, 30 years ago, made a statement that they accept scientific evolution. And if you would like to believe that, you're welcome to believe it. If you want to believe in a 10,000-year-old Earth, you're welcome to believe that, the creation myth.
Yes.
So, to me, that's progress. And there's a lot of other areas. Catholics have some incredibly intelligent people in their, in their organization. They apologized to the Native Americans for what was done to them.
Yes, but I suppose it's been a steady dilution of principles, not just for Catholics, but for Protestants too. And Anselman actually, who is a Catholic, says that immoral people have joined Catholic seminaries, and he should know, being an Anglo-Catholic, which is a very ancient religion in England. Um, but I suppose that the point is that um, all these religions change with the times, and I suppose we have to consider whether they are eternal and universal laws that we always have to obey, or we have to keep updating our religion and scripture according to the culture of our age. And if we do that, are we in fact being guided by religion if we keep updating our scripture or practices?
Well, that's the thing that frustrates people like Rick so much, and progressive people in general, who I know better than conservative people in some ways, because I skew progressive, is that the church doesn't change fast enough. Yes, if I had my way, what I would like to see have an openness to. I mean, to me, it seems like we could have married priests or unmarried priests. I don't, I mean, it's the celibacy issue is a big hang up for Protestants. It always makes Protestants crazy. I'm learning not to, I mean, I used to make me crazy. It doesn't bother me so much anymore. It's whatever. Maybe it's because that's just age. But, just as you forgot your question, Claire, what you're going to say at the beginning, I forgot the train of my thought. But anyway,
the church changing with the culture.
Yes, the church changes. Okay, yeah, but the church changes very, very slowly. That was my point. And it's frustratingly slow. And I think it corrects very slowly. So we've had what? Pope John Paul II was neither conservative nor liberal, but he certainly wasn't a strict traditionalist. He was very much a Vatican II Pope. And Pope Benedict, who followed him, was read by progressives as conservative, but yet he too was very much a Vatican II Pope. Which makes him a liberal. Then came Francis. Francis is the horrible progressive liberal. He's the Antichrist for some traditionalists. And yet he wasn't progressive enough. He didn't end celibacy. Explicitly did not. By choice, or institute same-sex marriage or any of the other things progressives want. But he was liberal. He was very liberal by the standards. But he did do some little things that really then bothered traditionalists, like he blessed gay people. His attitude was, why should I restrict my blessing? It's just like, I'm called to love people. I'm going to love people. That's how he saw it. His actual phrasing is really interesting on that specific episode, but I don't have it in front of me. And then now we have a new Pope, Pope Leo, and he seems to be, he's not as aggressively liberal. No, it's not quite so overtly progressive as Francis, but he's also not a strict. In fact, some of the traditionalists their hair is on fire because he basically told the hardcore traditionalists who are going around making their own bishops and whatnot, saying, basically sending the message that you're going to get excommunicated if you keep going on this course. And he's young enough and energetic enough that he might be the character who probably excommunicates both the German bishops and the SSPX guys, which would be fine by me. I mean, I think both extremes. Nobody gets to make their own rules. That's what I love about the Catholic Church. Why I'm loving it more and more is I conform to it, and to the degree to which I fail to conform to it, I confess. I say, I pray the prayer, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. And then we all move on together. And if I'm really obnoxious about it, then I really start paying a penalty for that rebellion. But I like the idea of a church it takes its time making its decisions. This is another thing about Roman Catholicism and the pastoral style of the Roman Church in my lifetime. It's very gentle with its people. It's very slow to anger, quick to forgive, looking for opportunities to mend bridges, restore fellowship. These are all good things. These are things that I think we need in a church, and I don't see it quite so much in the old church that I come out of. Any last thoughts, guys?
Yeah, it's a paradox, a catch-22 with the Roman Catholic Church and Eastern Orthodox. And the catch-22 is that one of their main, I don't know what the word is. One of their main attractions is that they want to preserve their history. And while they're busy preserving the past, it makes it incredibly hard to change. And, so it's like, if you want to conform to the Roman Catholic paradigm, I think that's great. If you can find spiritual nourishment there, that's great. And if that were me, I would do that. And then I would be myself over on the side, because knowing that I'm a free being and that I can follow Richard Rohr if I want to. He's a Franciscan Catholic. So, as long as we're not saying you're going to hell or, you're not really a Christian, then yeah, do whatever you want.
Well, they don't seem to be, that's not something they do, is that they don't, I mean, these days, they avoid that. They try to, they have clear teachings and standards, but as I said, they're very gentle in the way they talk about them. And so Claire says that the Catholic Church has been losing power since the Edict of Papal Infallibility, 1870. I would say Catholic power I don't know. The Catholic Church is not, I think it's gaining power in the United States. I can't speak for the world.
But that's only because the Pope is, surprise of surprises, an American, which is totally unexpected, isn't it?
Well, that's since it's not even been a year that this Pope has been American. Before that, we had a South American Pope, Argentinian, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was Francis.
And there was this reconciliation with a British monarch who visited him with his wife in the Vatican, and exchanged gifts and things. And I think plans are afoot to weaponize Christianity to, I don't know what. Well, I mean, actually, with the war and everything, they are kind of, turning it into some religious war. World War III has begun. It's a religious war. Armageddon is coming, and we should all be ready. They are talking in these terms, aren't they?
Who is?
Some people.
Well, the government, the American government, they are talking in these.
No, you got some characters, yeah. No.
Yeah, and this is, I think, quite sinister, and apparently
I agree
some
with that.
Yeah,
members of the armed forces are complaining
yeah,
that they've never heard of such a thing, being told that fighting a war is some religious holy duty, and yeah, I'd be quite concerned. Well, I am quite concerned, really.
Yeah, I think it's the why they chose American to be Pope. I was looking forward to more of a possibility of a Chinese or a East Asian or a African Pope when it was. I have no vote in these things, but I mean, it was just that to me would be like the most. That would have been the exciting choice. But the more I get to know Leo, the more I like him. Seems like I trust his judgment. I mean, give me him over Joel Osteen. I mean,
Okay.
I'll take that any day of the week. Uh, I don't. I mean, to me, I look at the priests in my local parish. I really like them. I find them admirable. I don't know if they're gay or straight in terms of inclination. I get the impression that they aren't hypocrites. They seem truthful, earnest, intelligent, super well educated individuals. Um, they're gentle, kind. I mean, there's no shouting from the pulpits. Our homilies run about 20 minutes. I like that, you know.
Yes, that is a kind duration, but I suppose churches have to give way because they know the attention spans of their congregation, and also they can't be frightening us with inquisitions and heretic burnings and all that kind of thing. But I'm sure if they could, they'd be showing their power.
No, I don't think anybody going to the church I'm going to locally would want to go to any burnings. Nobody finds that entertaining, I think, on either
But I think
side.
some people wish their churches would be stricter in condemning the
Sure,
behavior.
sure. Yeah, you always
Mhm.
have that. You always have that in all the churches, in all religions. You have the those who want a stricter rule and those who want looser rules. Um,
Yes, I
it's how
learned
do you
about.
navigate all these how do you navigate all these opinions? And
Well,
how
the
do you,
thing is, y- they must be rather tall. I'd read about this halfway covenant. You've heard of it. You know about it, don't you? That the Puritans have basically diluted their principles because having crossed the Atlantic and finding themselves in America, where that there was nobody to really help them enforce these rules of being baptized and all that kind of thing, that they had to dilute their principles to, well, about half of them in order to say, well, we'll still agree, we still have a church, because if they're too strict then nobody will turn up, and there would be no church. So that's
well
why
the
they had to.
actually well the story of the so-called Puritans is actually really interesting. One is they never called themselves that. That was one of those names people put on them from the outside, and they just kind of stuck. They saw themselves as nonconformists and as Congregationalists. So, in fact, so when you come across reading of the period, you'll see Congregationalists. Those were basically Calvinists from England, mostly, who um, weren't Presbyterian. So they wanted local control of the church. So the church basically administered itself and worked in cooperation with a network of other locally controlled congregations. They were the Congregationalists. The Presbyterians were Calvinists, mostly from Scotland, Northern Ireland, and parts of England, who believed in more ecclesiastical hierarchy. So they had more structure, more denominational oversight. The Congregationalists in America were one, they were extremely academically oriented. They founded Harvard, Yale, Princeton, right? This group of Calvinists, Presbyterians, and Congregationalists. But the Congregationalists specifically formed Harvard. They were very scholastically oriented, and they were heavily traumatized by the period in which they're more fundamentalist period, where they did the actual hanging witch trials and all that, all about that stuff. And they moderated, and they also had they in America, the Congregationalists split in two halves: the scholarly clerical half, those were considered old light or old side, and then later on old school Presbyterians and Congregationalists. And you had New Lights, and the New Lights were the guys who were into revival preaching, and they were into kind of a populist, radical conservative kind of expression. And those people, that's why you see what you call a diminution of their values. They found their super constricting, I guess you could say, the harshness of their theology. It gave way to something looser because they found it didn't work. It was violent. They were ashamed of it. If Nathaniel Hawthorne, his family, the writer Nathaniel Hawthorne, who wrote about this, part of it was he was deeply ashamed of it. In fact, Congregationalism gives way to Universalism and Unitarianism during the Enlightenment period, because they ultimately reject the Trinity, even this group of Congregationalists, because they didn't, I think as a culture, they were traumatized by the radicalism of what we call early Puritanism in America. It wasn't that there wasn't any lack of authority. I mean, they had a lot of power. It's just that in the frontier of early America, they found that a heavy hand either did a couple things. One, it either drove people away, or it made people mad with power, because there was no oversight. I mean, the Puritans, when they got power in England, what did they do? They invaded Ireland. They attacked Catholics. They made war. They created a civil war. They couldn't hold on to power. It turned out England needed its tradition. It needed its king. It needed its established church to constrain these impulses. Do you agree?
Well, because Cromwell thought that his son should inherit his position of being Lord Protector, and I guess that the English thought, well, if you're just going to start another royal house, we're going to have the real thing with blue blood instead of your, commoner blood. So I guess.
Well, and have a king maybe that the rest of Europe would acknowledge, because the rest of Europe had no interest in a Cromwellian dynasty, right?
Yes. Yeah, so.
And of course, where did they get their authority? They got it from the church. Originally, your claim to royal authority descended through a lineage that was ultimately, go back far enough, blessed by Rome. Take that away, and then what's the basis? What's the basis of your authority?
Yes, there was that famous trial of Charles I when Cromwell got together a court, and Charles said, by what right do you have to try me? Because I am your monarch, and therefore I am above the law because I make the law. And Cromwell had no answer, but executed him anyway. But he really did have no answer.
No, it's whoever's got the power, whoever wields the sword, makes the rules until he doesn't have a hold of it anymore, right?
Yes. Well, there's a 7-minute exchange on YouTube that you may enjoy. The exchange played by Alec Guinness and Richard
Mhm.
Harris, who
Yeah, it's a
plays
great scene.
Cromwell. Mm,
That's a great movie, by the way. It's a fun movie. I mean, it's a little dated, but it's still a good movie.
yes. Yes.
Cromwell. Cromwell. No,
Oh,
I mean, Cromwell's a perfect example of not the movie. I mean, the movie's great, but the man. It's a perfect example of the unhingedness of power without any checks or oversight or accountability.
well, it has to be limited by constitution, and I guess they were slowly working it out. But I thought it was interesting that during the interregnum, they threw out the Book of Common Prayer and used. I think they just had long sermons instead
Oh
to make
yes,
up.
yes. That's one of the things that the Protestants gave us were long sermons. God help us.
Yes.
So yeah, no, this I'm not. I mean, you see me as trying to look for an out, Rick, in terms of not taking personal responsibility, but I do see it as I'm not giving up on my conscience. That I am sacrificing my willfulness to just to participate in the greater, the so-called universal Catholic, the church, the larger church. I don't, I don't, most of my opinions, I can't claim to have any authority on they're just opinions on any given subject, really. I do my
Sure.
best to be responsible about it, but
Yes.
But
My
isn't it
my
profoundly sorry.
Rick first, then you, Claire.
uh, I would say go for it. Try it. See what it's like. People that I know that, when I quit the post office after 8 years, people said, "How can you quit a job like this?" I don't know what I would do. And I said, "Well, if you don't know what you do, you need to explore, you know, get out in life and see what's going on." So, yeah, I mean, try it and see how you like it from the inside. That's the only way you'll ever know.
Yeah,
Mm.
true. Claire, thoughts?
Well, I was just going to say that I think it's profoundly un-American to go for Catholicism because it's all about kings, right? And as a citizen of a republic, I think you're almost duty bound to reject anything to do with kings, which
That's
is
probably
what
true.
Catholicism was all about. So
That's
I
probably
don't
true.
know.
I'm probably being very un-American. But it's again a power without accountability. That's the United States,
Power
and it
corrupt.
seems like we can get away with killing just about anybody we want to now. We
Yeah,
not only can we get away with it, it seems like we're able to.
yeah.
Is there anybody who can escape this
Well,
government?
I think eventually Americans will, think, oh, perhaps we better take an interest in foreign policy, and maybe we don't want to be the people who are known to have started World War III, and people are going to hate us, and it will be bad for business, and Trump broke his promises, and maybe there must be some way of holding accountable presidents who say no more war and give you World War III. Surely something must be done about this.
Surely.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree, Claire. Hopefully, people will take an interest in what we've gotten ourselves into, or what their favorite MAGA people have gotten us into. And I feel the same way about religion. We live in an age right now where we have an opportunity like we've never had before to understand where we came from, why we believe what we believe. And if you're a thinking person, it's like, please dive into it, find out, why are you a Baptist? Do you know why you're a Baptist? Now, if you're just want to be saved and have a simple faith, that's fine. Some people are going to be that way. It's like, that I understand that. But for people I think people need to take a look at where we come from, so we don't, so we know where we're going.
Yeah, but you see, Rick, it's not just religion per se, but people just take on the religion of mum and dad, because for all sorts of social and familial reasons, they don't want to upset mum and dad if mum and dad take their religion seriously, and maybe we don't want to be ostracized by our family and community, so we hold on to the religion of mum and dad. But what if mum and dad are Aztecs or something bad like that, and I think maybe we should ask ourselves what is in theory the best religion.
Yeah, I totally agree, Claire. And that's why I think that religion should be taught in school, world religions. And I feel fortunate that my parents were not religious. The only time they went to church was a couple times on Christmas and maybe Easter.
Hmm.
So I don't have any baggage.
Hmm.
And I don't know the scriptures as well as a lot of people raised in the church. But one time I heard one of the TLC people somebody said, well, why aren't you a Muslim? And he said, well, because I'm a Christian. Well, do you think if you were born in Afghanistan, you might be a Muslim instead of a Christian? And he said, well, what difference does that make? He just didn't get it.
Yeah.
It's like if you're born in India, you're going to be a Hindu. It's, more or less.
Yeah, and the moral reasoning is basically, obviously, if you're shopping around for religion, you want the most powerful God, right? And then, and if God is supposed to have given us more than one revelation, you choose the one that gives you the most liberty, and is the least restrictive. That's how I would reason it.
Yeah,
And then you think, oh, there's the Torah with its 36 capital offenses, and there's the Quran that supports the First Amendment. So, it's kind of, well, I guess easy for me, but a lot of people don't think like me.
yeah. I look for the most loving God, and I appreciate the insights of all religions. I used to practice Sufism when I lived in Maui, and I got a lot out of that.
Mhm.
And I do Zen meditation in the morning. So,
Oh,
it's like
wow.
uh,
Hmm.
it all goes together. It's like, don't be afraid.
Hmm.
Don't be afraid.
Yes. And have some principles, and maybe defend them from time to time. And I think the least we can do is speak the truth as we see it in a country that allows us to do that
Yep.
without
Yes.
punishing us, and you
Yeah.
know and then
Yes.
we might get round to solving our problems
Yeah.
if we're allowed
Yeah.
to speak freely.
Speak your truth.
Yes.
All right, guys. I've got to pack her up and go, but thanks for keeping me company.
Thank you, Mark,
Thanks,
for
Mark.
hosting this, and it's good to meet you, Rick.
Good to meet you, Claire. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks,
So,
Mark.
yeah, thank you. The final thoughts I have none. So I'm just going to shut her down.
Okay.
Always, let's see. Let's play out something. I always feel like I have to play something out. Let's see here. I'll play this. Thanks, Rick. You have a good night. Good night. I guess it's almost nighttime
It's
for
getting
us.
there. Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
Getting there. How's
See
your
you
weather? Is it getting? You starting to feel spring up there?
A little bit. It's kind of off and on, not real rainy this year, which is nice. Get some sun every once in a while. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. All right. See you
Okay.
next
Love
time.
you.
Stay in touch.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Click, click. Here we go. It'll play Anselman's singing of the Nicene Creed, which no doubt if Sam were here, he'd tell us why it's not the Nicene Creed. You know who you are, Sam. You know this. But that's okay. We call it the Nicene Creed, right, Anselman? 5 to midnight in the UK. All right. Have a good night, Anselman. Here we go.
I believe in one God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and of all things visible and invisible, and in one Lord Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God, begotten of his Father before all worlds, God of God, light of light, very God of very God, begotten, not made, being of one substance with the Father, by whom all things were made, who for us men and for our salvation came down from heaven, and was incarnate by the Holy Ghost of the Virgin Mary, and was made man, and was crucified also for us, under Pontius Pilate. He suffered and was buried, and the third day he rose again, according to the Scriptures, and ascended into heaven, and sitteth on the right hand of the Father. And he shall come again with glory, to judge both the quick and the dead, whose kingdom shall have no end. And I believe in the Holy Ghost, the Lord, the giver of life, who proceedeth from the Father and the Son, who with the Father and the Son together is worshipped and glorified, who spake by the prophets. And I believe one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. I acknowledge one baptism for the remission of sins, and I look for the resurrection of the dead and the life of the world to come. Amen.